Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our side series on a Technicality. Today we're taking a look at the Neo Geo Mini, a little console emulation box that SNK released in 2018. It's a lot of fun. Amazon is selling them for super cheap right now, $30, but the issue with them is that the control scheme is just not that great. They went from an arcade-style controller on the AES with clicky microswitches for the sticks and 4 large buttons, and used an analog stick that's spoofing digital values for the inputs of the games. So actually controlling it is quite hard. It's more of a novelty piece than it is a real functional thing. So what we want to do is see if we can actually wire in something like a cookie joystick on the right into those analog pots to emulate the analog signal so that we're able to control the game. Going in, I wasn't sure if it would work, and we'll see how it goes. But first we need to get in. What I like to do on these little pads on the bottom is I'll use these blunt nose tweezers and I'll try to slide them in between the plastic and the sticky pad itself, and then once I get a grip, I'll just pop it right off. It's a really easy way not to tear them, and they do stay sticky enough that they'll pop right back on, but if you had to use a tiny bit of glue, you can. And on the corners here, you'll see that you don't actually sometimes have to take the pads all the way off. If you get underneath there just enough and peel back, you can get a screwdriver in there without completely removing it. But once you get all of those screws exposed, you just go ahead with your screwdriver and pop everything off, and through the magic of editing, we certainly speed it up. We're not going to show you 6 screws coming out, but then we're able to pop the bottom panel off and we can get to the exposed PCB. And you will see that there is the actual board itself, and then there's the control panel board. And it's the control panel board we want to worry about, because it has those potentiometer solder points we're going to be using to try to put a normal arcade stick in line with those potentiometers to see if we can actually get control out. So that is definitely just the only section we need to be working on. We're not doing any motherboard modifications in this video. There is one screw that holds it in, but otherwise, if you just get your finger underneath that little area right there and pull up straight, it'll pop right up because it is just a header and pins. There's no ribbon cable, and that is nice because those seem to break a lot. And you'll see that that's how it connects, and it's super easy to put back together, no issues. Now that we have that PCB out, that's what we're going to be doing all our work on, and you can pop the analog cap right there, and you will see that it is an analog system. It isn't digital like the original AES or MVS would be. And then we have the pads for the 4 buttons for start and select, and as we pick this up, you will see that if you move left and right, you're actually dealing with the top pot. That's just how it moves. And if you're moving up and down, you're dealing with the pot on the side. So when you're actually looking at the solder points on the side, up is left and right, and on the side is up and down. So you do need to do a little bit of thinking in your head to make sure you're working in the right areas. And the buttons just work on these little graphite pads to make the connection. I didn't do the buttons in this video. If you guys like this video, I will definitely finish up with it. You tell me if you guys want to see how to do the buttons, but it is quite easy. But just taking a look on that common ground pad, we'll find where ground is for all the buttons. It's going to be the pad on the bottom. And then as we go ahead for the A, B, C, and D and probe out, we will find out where each one of those ground pads is. Because if you wanted to put a button in, you just solder one end of it to the signal and one end to ground, and you'd have everything you need. Now around the back, you're going to see that we have these grounds on where the mechanism is tacked in place, but as far as the actual solder points for the potentiometer, there is no ground, but it is there technically. And then we have some ground on the header pins. What we need to do is make sure that that 10K pot is pushed high, because a value over 10K is going to complete the circuit and you're going to have a move. If it's not over 10K, it's not going to work. So we actually don't know until we get in here and put the solder in what's going to happen. Normally I would alligator clip these test leads, but what you see is when I try to get them in there, they just don't fit. The solder points are too small. So what I like to do is take a little bit of solid core copper wire. Solid is better to use as opposed to stranded because it's going to stay where I want. And I'm just going to clip off 6 small pieces so that I have some signal wires that I can test with. And I'll expose just a little bit of the actual wire itself with my strippers. I don't want too much because I don't want them to bridge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to solder them into these 6 points here on the potentiometers on the top and the bottom. I'm going to do that off screen because it is quite fine soldering and it is hard to do on camera, but now you'll see that I've done that. I have 6 different leads coming out, and I just check continuity to make sure I didn't bridge any of those solder balls. It's easy to inspect visually, but I check just the same. And then I'll just check some of my leads to make sure continuity is going through the solder point all the way to the end of the cable. So when I put it back in, you'll see that I now have extended it those 6 points. And what I can do with this stick here is alligator clip the leads together to start testing to see whether or not this modification is going to work the way I hoped it would. So what we have here is I've just alligator clipped everything together in line with the stick, and I'm just checking continuity to make sure that all my leads are connected and everything's good signal-wise, so I don't think it's not working, and when in reality I just have a bad connection. And I'll just come in and check my ground chain as well and see that I've got ground across both those middle potentiometer points, and that is going to be important later on. But now that we have everything set up, what we've done is alligator clipped all the leads from the joystick to those little test leads I put onto the bottom of the control panel on the Neo Geo Mini, and now we're able to put power to the back and see what we have. And this was just round one, and what I can tell you is it didn't work perfectly, and you will see here that the joystick is just going all sorts of crazy. You push it up, you push it right, and it just starts doing whatever it feels like. So we know that at least the signals we picked to test on the joystick aren't correct. But the good thing is with the alligator clips, we can start moving them around. So what I've done here is I've just connected left and right, and I've left up and down alone, and we have perfect left and right signal input on that joystick. And you'll see here that those three leads are blank, and as we push, it's kind of hard to see the screen, but we're good on left and right. So what we need to do is figure out why up and down aren't working. And what we find out is we have to actually connect them in a manner that doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, but seems to function. Because if you tap ground on the ground plane, you'll see that up and down are functioning. So the middle pin on up and down isn't technically what we need to use. We need to use a different grounding system. So what I came up with that works perfectly fine, moves left, right, up and down, is left and right to left and right on the joystick, and the ground in the middle. Up and down to up and down and common ground. Don't use the middle ground on up and down, and you'll be perfectly fine. The controls work. But what we'll see here is I'll put that back together because I don't love the HDMI out on this, so I'm not going to put this in a box. This is just kind of proof of concept, and you will see that as it's put back together, everything functions as is. So this modification technically can be reversed, and I do exactly that. So it's just something, kind of a proof of concept I wanted to see. If the HDMI out was better, I would totally do it, but I'll just use my soldering iron and zip those little test leads out. I apologize, my hand kind of got in the way a little bit. It's hard to solder on camera, but I do my best. Clean your iron, don't forget. And you'll see that we now have that control panel back in with the evidence of my hand soldering work. And all we'll do is screw that back in, and you will see that everything's working. We'll just pop the screws in the bottom, put the pads over. They are still sticky. And the Neo Geo Mini works like we never even touched it. So you can in fact at least put a joystick in. If you want to see the button mod, so let me know. I'm happy to do it. If you guys like this video, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe. We'll be back on Sunday with an episode and Tuesday as well. But thanks so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see the buttons, just leave a comment below. Bye-bye.